Selvaraj ji, who is the Consul General of India, Edinburgh. Very senior industry experts from India, from Scotland side, and then having the technical participants who are going to discuss on how the two countries can collaborate and take this thing forward. As everyone knows, India has obviously announced a very ambitious green hydrogen plan, talking about certain numbers, which I will leave it to the esteemed panelists of ours. Then similarly, Scotland to have very ambitious targets envisaged for the green hydrogen. So we believe this would be the right opportunity for the two countries to collaborate. We were looking to have a physical or a hybrid kind of a program today, but unfortunately, due to some unforeseen reasons, we were not able to hold it in a hybrid manner, wherein certain participants could have joined physically from India. But the version of the same is going to happen somewhere in May, and we will have enhanced participation from both the sides in that. With these initial remarks, welcoming everyone to this virtual interaction, I would request Mr. Sandeep Kashyap, who is the co-chair of FICCI Hydrogen Energy Committee, as well as the Chief Operating Officer, ACME Group, to have the context setting and his initial introductory remarks. Over to you, Mr. Sandeep Kashyap.
Thank you so much, Arpan. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite Mr. Vijay Salvaraj, Consul General of India, Edinburgh, Mr. Naresh Lalwani, Co-Chair, FICCI Hydrogen Energy Committee and Head Business Development, Green Hydrogen Derivatives, JSW Energy, Mr. Koluru Krishan, Chairman, CVC Infrastructure, Ms. Siona Shand, International Trade Director, Scottish Chamber of Commerce, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to participants from India and good morning to all those joining from Scotland. I welcome you all to this important roundtable on India-Scotland partnership, opportunities for growth, which FICCI has the pleasure of organizing along with our counterparts from Scotland, the Scottish Chamber of Commerce, and support from the Consulate General of Edinburgh. Green hydrogen, as we all know, is poised to play a vital role for economies in their decarbonizing journeys. Scaling up green hydrogen will be essential to achieve net zero emissions by 2070. According to some of the estimates, 10% of the world's energy needs by 2050 and can become a $10 trillion addressable market by 2050. Most of the hydrogen is part of the climate change mitigation efforts and clean energy related action. India and Scotland are no exceptions. The two countries have shown long-standing relationships, which is reflected in the perfect alignment of priorities and expertise in various areas, including energy. I'm happy that we are organizing this roundtable in the space of green hydrogen, which is now emerging as critical energy source. Is it okay now? Or still breaking?
No, it's okay now.
Okay. Indian government has already taken some initiatives to kickstart the hydrogen economy, such as hydrogen policy and national green hydrogen mission. The target is to produce 5 million metric ton of green hydrogen production by 2030 and an incentive layout of around 19,700 crores, which includes dedicated funds for pilot projects and research and development. India's hydrogen ambitions positions the country as one of the few attractive nations globally to green hydrogen production. The mission also emphasizes on export of green hydrogen and its derivatives with an aspirational target to capture around 10% of the global market. This will strengthen India's position in the global landscape and help to emerge as one of the global green hydrogen supply hubs. The country has already seen interest evinced by various foreign OEMs and technology providers to collaborate with Indian players, which is helping India to shape up the hydrogen economy. India has performed remarkably well in adding renewable capacity and the tariffs discovered in the past few years are among the lowest in the world. India's inclusive policy decisions, investments, and technology improvements, focusing on self-reliant supply chains, has helped the country in developing a transparent and competitive RE market. Availability of low cost renewable, especially the solar, will help the country to become cost competitive in the green hydrogen production. The green hydrogen transition is taking place in other parts of the world too, and we are very uh, keenly looking at all the developments happening across the world. At least 50 countries have unveiled their national green hydrogen or hydrogen strategy or roadmap. They will have important lessons and implications for India, both in terms of understanding the risks and challenges and also reaping the opportunities. Scotland, too, has launched its Hydrogen Action Plan in 2022, about which I'm sure we will hear more from the Scottish counterparts. Scotland is a testbed for innovative hydrogen energy solutions, and we must focus on collaborating in the areas of technology innovation, research and development, skill development, and nurturing the startups. I believe private sector of both the sides would play a critical role in enhancing cross-country collaborations in this area. The roundtable today would be an excellent platform for stakeholders to ideate on opportunities and expertise that both the sides can offer to each other for progressing on their hydrogen ambitions. With this, I welcome you once again for the highly enriching session today. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sanjeevji. Thank you so much for setting the tone and the context for this interaction. With this, may I now request Mr. Vijay Selvarajji, Consul General of India, Edinburgh, for his keynote address and sharing his perspective with the participants. We welcome you, sir, for this interaction.
Thank you. Members of industry and academia, both here in Scotland and in India. A very good morning to all of you here and a good afternoon to you, those in India. Firstly, my thanks to Wood PLC for offering this beautiful space to host this roundtable. As usual, Scotland never fails to amaze at every nook and corner. And I'll come back to that in a bit. But also my thanks to Shiana here from the Scottish Chamber and to Param and his entire team there in India and in London for getting us together at this roundtable this morning. We look at this roundtable as a first step for interaction between Indian companies and Scottish companies. I know that a lot of you have worked in India, have projects in India, have big development facilities in India. So when I say first step, I look at it from a more institutional perspective of trying to bring industry to industry collaboration and discussions to a larger context of a country to country collaboration and context. To this end, I think we now look forward to an MOU between the Scottish Chamber and the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and subsequently of visits of business people interested in green hydrogen from Scotland to India and from India to Scotland to see for themselves the work that is happening and how best they can collaborate and take the technology forward for the better of the people of both our countries. As was already mentioned, we have ambitious targets of a net zero by 2070, but halving fossil fuel emissions by 2030 is the real immediate context in which we are speaking today. And hydrogen is one of the several options that are there before us to achieve this target by 2030. Aberdeen, again, is a place well known for its North Sea oil resources, but has very, very quickly, in the context of the climate change, moved from an oil and gas-based setup to innovation and has again started leading the way in research, in study, in innovation, in the green space of renewable energy and green hydrogen, among others. I will not get into the various things that I've seen in this beautiful town or in this beautiful part of the United Kingdom, because as I said earlier, every bit of the country has innovation as its key, and it's been a part of a long drawn process. For over 200 years, Scotland has punched way above its weight in any field of science or humanities that the Scots have stepped into. With that as a context, I think this is a beautiful setup in which we can exchange views. And to us, this is the first of the institutional steps that we are taking as part of the Government of India. And I've mentioned this to the Scottish Development International, and they're very happy to join in to see how best they can support Scottish industry go into India. So wishing all of you a fruitful discussion. Good morning and thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. It could not have been much more, I would say, interesting as well as all-encompassing, with details on the hydrogen as well as on the current and the future steps that the two chambers are looking to take under your guidance. So thank you so much for your participation today, guiding us throughout for this program and for taking the steps next. Thank you so much. With this, I would now request Ms. Fiona Shan, International Director for Trade at Scottish Chambers of Commerce, to have the interactive session from the Scottish side and take over the, I would say, the podium or the mic for the interaction from the Scottish Chamber. Over to you, Ms. Fiona.
Thank you very much indeed. My colleague Roz is about to share the screen, so I hope you should be able to see our slides coming up any moment now.
Yep.
Yes, we can see. If you can just put it in the full view modes and also enlarge maximize the screen.
Perfect. There. How's that? That's okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So yes, and to reiterate, good morning to everybody in Scotland and good afternoon, good evening to everybody in India. It's gloriously sunny in Aberdeen, and I like to think that has something to do with this meeting today, I have to say. So my name is Shauna. I'm the International Trade Director at the Scottish Chambers of Commerce. I'll be the host for the next hour or so, and it's a pleasure to meet with you all and to facilitate this today. We would like you all to get involved, so we do have some social media you can get involved in. So we have the 3 Twitter handles for the organisations and also some hashtags. So as the conversation happens, please make sure you sort of pass this messaging on throughout the morning. That would be fantastic. So very briefly, why are we partnering? Well, we are the heart of Scotland's largest and most influential business-to-business network. And we represent nearly 13,000 companies and over 50% of Scotland's private sector workforce. And we're delighted so many businesses throughout Scotland are joining us today. Like many chambers, we're members of the International Chambers of Commerce, which actually represent about 40 million businesses across 100 companies. And that's basically what brings us today. So India's big hopes for green hydrogen. Well, we've come together to discuss the future of clean energy and the role that hydrogen can play in creating a sustainable and environmentally friendly world. I actually sent our Scottish delegates some homework, which was kindly delivered by the Consul General in India, thank you, which highlighted the launch of the National Hydrogen Mission of India to make it a global hub for green hydrogen production, usage and support. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from our panelists today. But we've mentioned a little bit about why we're here, sort of the Scotland perspective. So Scotland was indeed the first UK nation in the UK to publish a policy statement on hydrogen. So in its 2020 policy statement, the Scottish Government set out its vision for Scotland, committing to achieve net zero by 2045, which does not feel very far away. Scotland is rethinking the future. We're shaping a net zero economy that works for the entire world. With abundant renewable energy resources, Scotland is pioneering low and zero carbon technologies. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on green hydrogen, so I am going to pass you over to our speakers today, who are going to highlight some of the infrastructure, skills, experience, and reasons that Scotland is the right choice for companies looking to develop their hydrogen solutions. We have the raw potential, the infrastructure and supply chain to support the move towards the production and management of hydrogen at scale. We're committed to finding ever cleaner and greener methods of powering the modern world, and we're delighted to meet so many delegates from India today to reinforce this message. So Mr. Selvage has had a few words. I was going to pass over to him, but we swapped order, but that's absolutely fine. But it's a lovely photo of him nonetheless. So I'm going to hear from speakers in Scotland. So we have Professor John Underhill from the Director for Energy Transition of the University of Aberdeen. We have Paul Gill from Logan Energy, who I believe is joining us online, so we'll have to switch in and off. Alex Richmond from GN Flow Measurement Services Limited, Andy and David from Riot Digital, and last but not least, Tony Fowler from Wood PLC to present to you today. There will be an opportunity for questions and answers, so I believe the chat box and Q&A box are open. So please feel free to make some introductions through the chat box, pop us your email details, any delegates, any messages you want, and in the Q&A box, we'll come back to that later to ask our panelists any questions. So first but not least, I'm going to hand you over to Professor John Underhill.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for the introduction, and it's very nice to be here. What I'm going to do is to take you through some of the outcomes of a recent report that was done, commissioned by the Scottish Government, that the Scottish Science Advisory Council published on, presented to ministers in December, and then to the policy unit, which outlines some of the challenges but opportunities associated with hydrogen. We've heard already the opportunity, the potential that hydrogen has as part of the energy strategy and just transition plan in Scotland, which is currently out for consultation. What I should say first is, what is the Scottish Science Advisory Council? The SSAC is the highest level of scientific advisory body, providing independent advice and recommendations on science strategy into government across the whole, across all sectors. What happened a year ago was the SSAC were asked to review the opportunity and to identify any hurdles and barriers affecting the delivery of hydrogen as a green technology. The SSAC study that was undertaken complements other research being undertaken across the Scottish sector, both in academia and in industry. The briefing note itself was published. It was presented first in November and published at the end of November, presented to ministers thereafter, and now the Scottish Government, Department of Energy and Climate Change last month. And as you can see here, it's about the opportunities and challenges associated with hydrogen, and was subdivided into two main sections. The first, looking at the source, the transportation, storage and supply of hydrogen. The second part was the social economic part, the license to operate, outreach into the public domain. And we can see with challenges, a village called Whitby, which is a hydrogen test bed in Ellesmere Port in Cheshire, that if you don't take the public with you, there are challenges associated with it. But I'm going to concentrate on the source, transportation, storage and supply, which is the scientific, if you like, the natural science inputs, physical science inputs. All of us around the room will know this, that there are a number of sources of hydrogen, which blue is relying on the close spatial proximity between a methane source, gas field in this instance, a carbon store, so that we don't have the carbon emitted into the atmosphere, and a hydrogen export route. The North Sea, and particularly the gas fields of the North Sea, obviously offer an opportunity in this regard. With an ever-increasing awareness, however, about the climate compatible, the need for climate compatible energy sources, attention is growing by the day. There's more appetite for green hydrogen derived from the electrolysis, and I'm going to stress this, of fresh water to produce hydrogen and oxygen, but no carbon byproduct. Hydrogen occurs on the periodic table where it does for a reason. It's small, it's nimble, it's highly diffuse, and is the lightest of all elements. So its physical and chemical properties mean that it's really hard to ensure that leakage is minimized. We must attempt to do that to the maximum of our ability. The most successful means of storage, the proven technology, is geologically exemplified by hermetically sealed in the subsurface, having the right lithology, the right rock type, which is evaporites, rock salt and halite, and a number of humans, caverns which have been dissolved out by human activity, is the main storage site in places like Germany and other parts of the world. So one of the challenges for Scotland is that there is no onshore salt deposits in Scotland. The nearest are in England, northeast England, Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, Cheshire, or Northern Ireland. So if we can't use the natural onshore geology, pivot is, can we use offshore subsurface depleted fields as a potential alternative? And research is ongoing at the moment across Scotland, looking at porous reservoirs in those depleted oil and gas fields. But as yet is unproven. In 50 years of exploring in the North Sea, we have not found any natural hydrogen deposits. We have found carbon dioxide, and we found a lot more long-chained hydrocarbons. So it's all about the size of the molecule and the sealing potential. So if we can't use onshore geology, if we can't use the offshore fields, or at least it's unproven at the moment, the alternative is storage in manufactured containers. Then there comes in the social license to operate. Will we be permitted to put town gasometers around the country to the scale we need? Supply and co-location is really important. Offshore, it's seawater. It has sodium and chlorine associated with it. So actually, to have wind farms that then produce potentially hydrogen from electrolysis, we actually will need desalination as well. We need to ensure we take that sodium and chlorine out, which adds expense and indeed inefficiency. We put more energy in to get less out. Something that also applies, coincidentally, to blue hydrogen. So the other thing is that production, if we're going to use offshore facilities with desalination, this will, for green hydrogen, it depends on having a regulatory compliance. As yet, the regulation has not caught up with the ambition. And there needs agreement between the Crown Estate Scotland, or in English and Welsh waters, the Crown Estate, and the North Sea Transition Authority, in order to get the management of trade-offs between the different renewable technologies. For instance, if you put a wind farm over a carbon storage site, there is then conflict between the two joint venture operators. So there are some real challenges in this area, but the opportunity is there if we get this right. But we need to make sure that the regulation is in place. Final few comments. Transportation. Hydrogen can be blended with methane to around 20% without the cookers going off, the boiler flames failing to light. If we go to a more ambitious hydrogen base, then all gas appliances and the infrastructure will need to be modified or replaced by new or hybrid ones. Hydrogen causes steel embrittlement, and as a result, much of the infrastructure that we have currently impacts hydrogen transportation, supply, and use. Again, what we have to think about is changing the whole infrastructure. This is the scale that we're looking at. Hydrogen also has an increased flammability range, a lower ignition energy, and higher degradation index, meaning that actually we need more robust safety measures. There is a nervousness around the hydrogen. These need to be in place. So the whole system has to be reconfigured and potentially replaced to be compliant for hydrogen transport. The conclusion of the report was that hydrogen has its niche. Clearly, there are major significant challenges associated, as I pointed out, with source, storage, supply, and transportation. And the consequences for the scale up for the whole of Scotland and the costs required are major. So the conclusion of the report was that actually on domestic heating, cooking, and industrial uses, it is a big leap as we are currently. However, in terms, as you see at the bottom here, the highest value industry that's been recognised by the report and for the Scottish Government is that hydrogen is likely to be useful and usable for transportation. So we're thinking of buses. We look around Aberdeen, they're being used now. Ferries, trains. That is the starting point, the stepping stone on this particular journey. So questions exist about the level of investment, the geographical constraints and supply. And I was speaking to some of the colleagues earlier about thinking about horses for courses and where things apply. It might work in smaller communities like Orkney and the like, or in Aberdeen. We have to think carefully about the level of ambition and work through the whole process. I'll leave you with a Nature editorial which highlights that also hydrogen has, if you like, that people are looking at whether hydrogen is as an impactful greenhouse gas or worse than carbon dioxide. And I think it's really important that we look into what the value of hydrogen is in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions, as well as clearly the costs and the technical considerations. What we're seeking to do at Aberdeen University is lead a centre of doctoral training which looks at these particular issues. And also my colleague here, Sarah from RGU, we're working together with RGU and North East Scotland College with a view to have something called the National Energy Skills Accelerator, NESA. And we've won £1 million of support from the Scottish Government in order to upskill and reskill to face some of these challenges and to try and work out the best way to advance hydrogen with caution in this particular area, given the things that I've said. Thank you very much. I'll happily answer any questions later.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to unshare our screen now and just double check that Paul is available to.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, there we go. Wonderful. Perfect. On you go.
Okay. I don't know how I control my slides, by the way. So are they available, or do I need to share my screen?
We actually have them. We could share the screen. You just need to ask for the next slide from Roz, if that's okay, Paul.
That's fine. Okay.
Give us just 2 seconds. We'll reshare. Clicker. Yeah, that's fine if you don't mind. So if you just forward one. No, it doesn't seem to like it. Can everybody see the screen?
I can see the screen, but not. I can see the previous slides.
Yeah. 2 seconds. Try it on your laptop. If you just hit page down, it should, yeah. There we go. Can you see it now?
That's it. Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Paul Gill from Logan Energy, and we are based in Edinburgh and supply integrated hydrogen-based solutions for a range of different industries. And what that means is that we look at our customers' requirements from start to finish in order to deliver green hydrogen solutions where we integrate electrolyzers with the required compression and storage to be able to dispense hydrogen for the end usage for our customers, as shown by the diagram here. If we move to the next slide. Our experience started nearly over a decade ago with the Leavenmouth Community Project, where we worked with a number of partners to deliver hydrogen-based solutions from renewable energy for about 3 buildings and a fleet of 17 vehicles. So that included putting electrolyzers in place, having the required compression and storage to be able to refuel those vehicles and power the fuel cells for those buildings. We gained a huge amount of learning from that project and have subsequently gone on to deliver a number of other projects. So next slide. As was mentioned by Professor Underhill, the transportation sector is immediately a big user of hydrogen. And 2 years ago, we supplied the first refueling station for TransLink buses into Belfast for refueling 10 buses. And that project went so well that Belfast TransLink ordered a second refueler, if you can move to the next slide, where we are now delivering up to or in excess of 3 tons of hydrogen a day to be able to refuel over 20 buses back to back. And that is all from a green hydrogen production facility in Northern Ireland. And we're also working with a number of other cities now as well to be able to deliver refueling stations. And although the transportation sector is hopefully going to be a big user of hydrogen, we're also looking at alternative industries. So if we move to the next slide. Just south of Aberdeen in Montrose is a distillery by the name of Arbicki, where we have worked with a partner to put in a wind farm and solar array in a two-phase project. The first phase is to help the whiskey distillery to decarbonize by getting them away from fossil fuels and use hydrogen production and storage for their steam boilers. The second phase of the project will be to get them completely off fossil fuels in the next 2 years so that they are net zero, hopefully by 2025. The same methodology could be applied to any distillery within Scotland and then further afield to anywhere in the world. And this also applies to other very heat intensive industries such as breweries, asphalt factories. There are many applications, but a lot of it is about matching the right renewables to the hydrogen production, because every region is going to differ. In Scotland, we use a lot of wind power. In India, it's going to be solar. And so we need to balance the right renewables with our green hydrogen production. So that's it from Logan Energy, and hopefully I'll take questions from you a little bit later. Thank you very much for listening.
Just to let you know, Paul, I may or may not have tried the gin, just so you know. Thank you.
I'm sure plenty of people have tried a bit of gin and whiskey in their time.
We'll make it available, we promise. Thank you very much. So we'll pass now to Alex. Check that the that's it. Perfect.
It does work. My name's Alex Richmond, so I'm the account manager for hydrogen at GM Flow. So we're a flow meter manufacturer. So we specialise in flow meters for measuring various fluids, starting off in oil and gas. So you can see our three products there. So you've got the adjuster cone, which is our sort of pioneering piece of equipment, which is the first of its type. And then you've got a standard Integra cone, which is it's a cone that's readily available in the market from other manufacturers as well. So that's just sort of our standard meter, and then we've got the high cone that's been specifically developed for hydrogen. And then you can see the image, the diagram, which is a cross section cut through the adjuster cone to show how it actually works. So I wanted to discuss the challenges for measuring hydrogen. So obviously in refueling application, you've got high static pressure. So generally 700 bar, but it can be much higher than that. And lots of manufacturers of refueling stations are now looking to increase that further to increase the range of the vehicles without having to have a larger footprint on the vehicle for fuel tanks. You've got large pressure range, so going from near enough zero right up the way to 700 and 100 bar. That's a challenge for meters. You know, generally you want it to be a nice steady flow, steady temperature, steady pressure. And then the existing meters that are used on refueling stations can suffer up to a 50 bar pressure drop. When you're working so hard to get something up to 700 bar, and then you're losing 50 bar of that through the meter, it's obviously lost energy. So it's another factor to add into your losses. And then obviously cryogenic temperatures, when you get to liquefaction, you're then having to measure things at minus 253, which isn't something that is really done all that often at the moment. That's not going to be so much of an issue for land-based vehicles. It will be for maritime and aviation if it gets into aviation, for long haul, wide body aircraft. So it's obviously something to factor in and to think about for the refueling of aircraft, along with all the safety sides of things as well. And then you've got the reverse Jules Thompson as well. So when it's expanding, it actually heats up. So that's something that needs to be managed, both for the tanks on the vehicle, but also for any metered solution. You need to be mindful of where the meter is located on the refueling station. And then the other thing is the uncertainty currently that meters are able to achieve is around about 1%, which is quite high. And coming from oil and gas, you know, we're used to sort of 0.2% on our fiscal metering skids for calibration, and then the actual performance of the skid should be around 0.25 in total. So it's quite a tight tolerance, and I don't think will really get there with hydrogen just because of the challenges on the screen, or not in the short term anyway. So hence why we designed the high cone. The high cone was designed to be able to handle up to 1,034 bar. So the actual meter body itself can handle up to 20,000 psi, so more like 1,300 bar. That's design test pressure. Our limitations are on the transmitters that are used, so the electronic equipment that's used on the meter to determine what the flow rate is. And then the pressure drop as well, we as low as 0.7 bar gauge, or max is 0.7 bar gauge, sorry. So that's a significant advantage because we're not dropping as much pressure as other manufacturer meters. So the standard meter that's used on refueling systems at the moment is a Coriolis meter, which do suffer from pressure, not just pressure drop, but also the tubes in the Coriolis meter. The stiffness changes as pressure is applied, and that affects the performance of the tubes because they basically oscillate in the pipe. So the stiffness changing is going to affect the performance of the meter. And then cryogenic is possible, but we have a differential pressure transmitter. So because of cryogenic applications, you then have to start locating the transmitter further away to allow the ambient temperature to warm up the fluid in the lines. So it's possible. I think for a -253 application, you're talking around about 5 meter length of impulse lines to guarantee that you're going to be within the workable range of the differential pressure transmitter, which is possible depending on the location that it is. So if it's an airfield, it's possible to do that if it's a liquefaction side of things, or maritime shipyard or dock. We've got 0.5% accuracy, plus or minus, and then for a typical refueling application, we're at 0.63%. So when I say typical refueling, just click along. So this shows here your typical refueling. So you can see your refueling flow rate ramping up in the blue line. So it builds up gradually and then comes off. So because of that, and you've also got stops in the process as well to make sure there's no leaks. So because of that, you've got quite a large uncertainty window, because at the very low flow rates, your uncertainty is very high. But then once you get up a little bit, your uncertainty drops significantly. Your problem is you've got stops in the flow as well, but the ramp up should be much quicker than at start, but there'll still be a bit of a ramp up. So that's why the uncertainty increases for a typical refueling application. But that's still better than the 1% that's achieved currently from the Coriolis meters that are on the market. And this just basically shows the idea of a cone meter. So it's a differential pressure device. You've got flow going through the pipe, it hits the cone and generates a differential pressure over the cone. So it's a restriction in the line generates the differential to determine what your flow is. And that's the calculation there, which is basically a square root calculation. Square root extraction can be done for it as well, but the uncertainty is much worse. So this calculation comes directly from the ISO 5167 Part 5 standard, which is the standard for differential pressure cone meters. So it's a fairly standard meter, and that's it from us. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Alex. So we're going to pass to the double act now of Andy and David, but just a reminder, you can pop any questions into the Q&A box online if you've anything that you want to ask afterwards, but I will pass to you two now.
Okay. Hi everybody, I'm David and this is Andy. We're representing Riot Digital, which stands for Realities in IoT. So we have a combined set of services based around virtual and augmented reality and Internet of Things technology. And the Internet of Things technology tends to be sensor technology, which lends itself very much to the kind of challenges that Alex was mentioning in terms of being able to pick up on temperature differences and expansion differences and so forth instantaneously and across wide distances. The extended reality and augmented reality allows people, subject matter experts remotely, to observe in context when things are going through the parameter, when things are getting too hot or expanding too fast or getting too cold or too brittle. And then the augmented reality, particularly devices like Andy has today, which are ATEX approved, explosive environment approved augmented reality setups, where the person on site can then go and fix the problem and be guided live by the subject matter wherever they might be in the world. We also work very heavily in training because virtual reality lends itself beautifully to high risk practical training for new skills, particularly skills transitions from things like standard oil and gas to renewable energies. We're already working with people in the Middle East, people in Africa, Australia, and across the UK on energy transition projects using virtual reality for training, but we'll come back to that shortly. Andy's going to give you a bit more detail on the IoT sensor technology because he's the expert.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the invitation, Shona and Roz. So obviously IoT is a buzzword. A lot of sensing, new smart sensing capabilities coming online. Historically, the likes of your Emersons and your big names in the industry, it's been a lot more challenging to do these design projects. So a lot of the companies are now looking to push the envelope, and hydrogen's a very good test bed for that. So looking at working on hydrogen to air, sensors, smart sensors. For example, one thing that we did learn recently was in California for the refueling stations, they need to have a minimum of 15 hydrogen to air sensors on every refueling station. So again, working with the OEMs directly so that we can offer multi-gas detection, the likes of environmental condition monitoring, and some of the other areas are monitoring critical assets, your machinery. So making sure the gearboxes, compressors, pumps, etc., are all working properly. And then the real want and desire from many industries is linking all this new live telemetry data into a meaningful digital twin, as you'll see there. So yeah, everyone seems to have a different idea of what a digital twin is, but certainly using the data, making it as real time as they possibly can, and then using the digital twin for the likes of design, for modifications, for planning, and also for training.
Okay, so here's some examples of, as I mentioned, the digital twinning for training, and as I mentioned earlier on, the live augmented worker and remote worker, which can dramatically reduce downtime when there's an issue, which is maybe in a remote site or at the top of a pylon or at the top of a wind turbine, or a remote solar field or something like that. It means that things can get fixed straight away without having to sort of shut things down. It means that there's less damage occurs, and it reduces the cost and so forth as well. Now, training is a major part of what we do, particularly with a lot of these nascent technologies where you need to get a workforce skilled up rapidly and safely, and then they need to be skilled up and certified so they can then take those skills anywhere in the world. That's what we work with a number of colleges, universities, and accreditation authorities around the UK and around the world in order to develop practical training, rapid training that's suitable for things like hydrogen and renewable energy, but can be accredited internationally. So once you're trained, you can use it locally, but you can also work all over the world with it. So it's good for the macroeconomics as well as the microeconomics. So what we've discovered is that virtual reality training is actually, this wasn't even us, this was PricewaterhouseCoopers did some independent studies into this and discovered that when compared to even practical training as it stands, and certainly remote learning, the e-learning, it's considerably faster to learn. You learn in a number of different ways. People who are not necessarily book learners can learn through doing, and the retention is much higher and confidence is much higher. And we didn't do that. That was somebody else did that research. I love it, but we didn't. So I've created a short video showing how we've applied this for renewable energy and how we're continuing to apply it. So I'll just play that now. So the point of this is to reduce costs, dramatically increase output and of qualified students, and also train the trainers who can then continue to spread this information out. Now, we try to make sure that the cost and the accessibility are as high as possible. So we've created mobile systems whereby you don't have to go to a central test centre. You can actually send headsets and boxes of headsets to remote training centres, which are all linked through the cloud to central learning environments. So therefore, you can train people all over the country, even in rural areas, very rapidly, very cheaply. And that's us. So if anybody has any questions at this stage or later on, feel free to speak to Andy or I about it.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. And last but not least, from the Scotland side, we have Tony from Wood.
Very much. So what was it? We'll reduce our learning capacity by a third, or whatever in this environment was the virtual reality.
Increase 1 minute.
Right. Well, yeah. Thanks everyone. It's been very interesting so far, and yeah, thanks for everyone calling in as well, particularly from far away and at later times in the day. I'll try and keep it as swift as and engaging as possible. So just starting with who we are at Wood, we've been around for a long time. We specialize in energy and in materials, and it's important to say that energy transition, although in the recent context, it's very urgent and very abundantly clear what we're talking about. We've been through a number of energy transitions, even from wood to oil to gas, and to some extent nuclear, and we're navigating our current one now to renewables and decarbonisation. And just to reinforce that we've been part of that process for a long time, sustainably, and looking forward to positioning and challenging and contributing in the next part. I can feel people switching off as we talk about business structure, but the only point that I want to make here is that the 3 pillars that we're structured really drives home what parts of the projects that we're contributing towards. And that's, I'll come on to where that lands in the green hydrogen space. But certainly the first bucket there, consulting, that's the majority of green hydrogen projects that we see to date. Principally because it's an immature market, it's still developing, it's still finding its feet. So a lot of the feasibility, a lot of the work we do is building confidence in the projects with technical and commercial evaluations to give clients the confidence to meet the final investment decision going forward. And then projects and operations, those are spaces that we operate in. But I'll come on to that. I'll quickly skip over the slide because it is really just to enforce that we're involved in all parts of the project, where we see ourselves as a lifetime life cycle partner. We can dip in and out. We don't have to be part the whole way, but having the experience of all those parts of the project we see as an advantage and can be beneficial to any green hydrogen projects. In terms of energy transition, these are the different buckets that we work on. I know we're focusing on hydrogen today, but it's important to flag that the green part of hydrogen doesn't come from the hydrogen itself. It comes from the renewable and the low carbon electricity that goes into it. So we've got strong expertise that we've developed over the last couple of years, complemented by people that are in the room today in the wider industry. So it's although I won't put too much, I won't labour the point, it's important to know that we have these interface expertise as well to bring well-rounded projects forward. If there's anything I want you to take away from today, these are the 3, this is the mantra that we live with green hydrogen. It's make it, move it, and use it. And they're reasonably self-explanatory, making it obviously the production cycle, so that those kind of interfaces with green renewables, moving it in transportation, I know that John touched on that earlier on, and then using it as well. So it can be industrial clusters, it can be refineries, it can be a number of different applications, and I'll come on to some of the different ways that Wood has done that. But these are if we consolidate it all down to the complexity of this economy that we're talking about, these are the 3 big parts that certainly we see most sense from. I'll be very brief in this one. This was really just to touch on, from the UK perspective, a lot of focus into decarbonisation strategy has really been through industrial clusters. And I'll come on to a couple of case studies, but this is a large part of these industrial clusters is to do with blue, green hydrogen, carbon capture, all these elements integrated together. And these are elements that these are projects that we've really been focusing on building experience on in the last couple of years. I've already touched on this, so I'm not going to labour the point, but sometimes a picture can speak 1,000 words, so it's good to see everything integrated together, the production, the transportation, and the actual application of hydrogen as a feedstock or whatever it comes on to. Again, this is a slightly more boring slide, which I put it towards the back, but it's essentially, I wanted just to showcase all the different capabilities that we can do in these spaces. And feasibility development has really been the core of what we've been doing in the green hydrogen up to date, really building the client confidence and feasibility of these studies. But in time, and we've got other sectors that we can pull from, we can operate in that build and operate phase as well. So instead of running through, I do have a lot of case studies at the back end of the slide or the slide pack. I don't propose to go through them all, but this is a nice overview of all the kind of different projects that we have got involved with from a green hydrogen perspective. Some of them are very bespoke. It can be refineries. Sorry, Vijay, were you jumping in or?
No, they're not in India.
Yeah, no, I'll talk. We do have 4 offices in India, and we're maybe selling ourselves short in actually some of the experiences that we're selling here. But
hopefully this will get you there.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
We are working with some Indian firms, so just to give you confidence that we're not avoiding.
Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, this is just an overview of the kind of project. So it's industrial clusters, it's the engineering design, and then the actual final application parts. And I won't touch on it for too long, but Australia is really, the market in hydrogen is very, very fluent and is becoming very developed very quickly. So a lot of the projects that we're doing are through there as well. I'm coming to the end of the timer that I've set myself, so I won't go through these in huge depths, but it's just to give you a flavour of the kind of projects that we're getting involved with. These can be engineering feeds, which is get the very detailed side of things, but it can also be a lot more high level, looking at the different energy hubs and production centres and how they all link together with the supply chain to actually deliver it. So very, very different sides of the scale, but yeah, we'd be happy to have further conversations about which side different people in the room are part of, and yeah, where we can help contribute. So yeah, there's a lot of case studies here, so I think I'll just I'll swiftly move on and hand over, but I'm quite happy to answer any questions about any specifics that you've seen today, and I think the slides will be shared later on as well, so we'll have the luxury of exploring them in a lot more depth than we can cover here. So thank you. I'll just wrap up there, and yeah, I know it's there we go. We got there in the end. So yeah, I'll hand up. I think we're going virtual now, are we?
We are. So yeah, thanks very much indeed, Tony. That's sort of it from the Scotland side. Are all the delegates happy for the slides to be shared? Perfect. So Arpan will share them with you after the event, and you can share them out with the delegates if that's okay. And if anybody wants their contact details added, just add them to your slide, and then any of the delegates can get in touch with you directly. So that's it from Scotland until we go into the Q&A. I believe we're going back to India now.
Sure. Thank you so much, all the panelists and Ms. Shona, for a very fruitful and insightful discussions around how Scotland is, developing the ecosystem for the green hydrogen. I am sure India has also a lot of potential and opportunities and a lot of initiatives and efforts going on in the direction. And to discuss them in detail, along with the panelists, I would request Mr. Koloru Krishnan, the Chairman, CPC Infrastructure, to take forward this Indian panel and highlight on the opportunities, challenges, the efforts, the initiatives, how we are building the ecosystem on the green hydrogen, and how we are looking towards the ecosystem. So over to you, Mr. Krishnan, for a very fruitful discussion on the Indian side.
Thank you, Arvind. It's so cliche to start talking of Scotch whisky in India-Scotland collaboration, but Paul gave me the cue. So I'm going to take that and bring it to the context of how we can collaborate with hydrogen. Scotland is the largest producer of premium whiskey, but India is now the largest consumer of Scotch whiskey, though it's the 5th largest in terms of volume. So Indian market and industry characteristic is high volume, but competitive rates and without compromise on quality. This is evident in India if you take the information technology, telecommunications, and in recent times, solar photovoltaic. India imports a fair amount of solar cells and modules, but we are the largest producer of solar plants. I guess this is something that should be taken into consideration in India-Scotland collaboration. Scotland is blessed with a lot of natural resources. I'm sure you want to be a major exporter of green hydrogen. Therefore, when we try and do this, India also has very ambitious programs, both for domestic consumption as well as exports. So we should try and find a way where we collaborate and combine our strengths. You already heard that we have a 2030 target of 5 million tons of green hydrogen. It's backed with about 125 gigawatt of solar and wind power and matching electrolyzers. Being very pragmatic in this medium-term goal, the focus is on displacing gray hydrogen in refineries and fertilizer plants, encourage green steel production, blend hydrogen in natural gas pipelines, and export green ammonia or any other derivatives. But in this period, we would also be working towards technologies and capabilities across the value chain for a post-2030 scenario. This would have green hydrogen for transport, green hydrogen transport, not for transport. Transport, inland and exports for green hydrogen and its derivatives. Green hydrogen refueling infrastructure, because mobility will be a major user of green hydrogen. So how do we go about the refueling infrastructure? Then also the green hydrogen for long distance transport, not limiting ourselves to fuel cell EVs, but also looking at ICEs, both for road and rail transport. And I may add that we already have an Indian company which has a transnational presence, has already got a commercialized 700 bar composite type 4 cylinders, which can be fitted into a transport vehicle or for storage. Then India has a large pool of skilled engineers and technicians in its refining, fertilizers, petrochemical sectors. So we're going through very major reskilling programs where this skilled manpower can be deployed for green hydrogen. If I was to talk with the Indians working in the oil and gas sector in the Gulf countries, in the GCC, I would think that India is probably the largest resource potentially for green hydrogen production and operations worldwide. We have a very able panel from the Indian side who will give you a conceptual perspective of the green hydrogen market and how India has planning to scale up in it, both in India and abroad, and to international collaborations. So to start with, may I invite Dr. Khare, Senior Advisor, Global Green Growth Institute, to make his opening remarks.
Thank you, Krishnan, Mr. Krishnan. It was our pleasure to hear your very, very ambitious and plan, and especially the Scotch whisky which you are talking about. But thank you, Vicky, for inviting me. And if you permit, I can have a small presentation since I am working with the Global Green Growth Institute. Can somebody help me to bring out my presentation? Yeah, can it be make full screen? Make it full screen of the presentation, please. Yeah, thank you. Next, please. I'm associated here with the Global Green Growth Institute, which is a treaty-based international intergovernmental organization headquartered at Seoul and working with in India on various aspects of the sustainable energy, sustainable landscape, and green cities. Next, please. The GGGI is a member countries of comprising of 45 member states, which includes United Kingdom also and India as well. India is verge of the joining this membership here itself, and many other developing countries are there. There are some core funding coming from the developed countries for various activities initiated here. We are the knowledge partner with the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, and we are working with very closely with other government ministries and departments as well as the state entities. Next, please. Mr. Krishnan has already given you an overview of the National Green Energy and Green Hydrogen Mission, which has been launched very recently, and everybody is fully aware about this. I want to just to say that 5 million metric tons of the green hydrogen by 2030, commensurate with the Scottish policies, where they are also talking about green hydrogen production. But very interesting thing is coming up, apart from the electrolyzers business, the Indian government has placed a very strong proposition on the biomass-based hydrogen productions, though it is very expensive at this moment of time. But hopefully, these type of systems gradually go while doing the research and development and some pilots and some demonstration. The cost of the production of the green hydrogen may come down. And I'm not going to very detail because the time is running short, and I will just give you some idea about that. Very huge investment was proposed here in this green hydrogen energy mission. About 2.7 billion US dollar is being provided for various activities. Most of them are for the establishment of the manufacturing facilities here itself. And I find that Scottish partner industries may find that India is one of the place where manufacturing hub can be created. Next, please. Next slide, please. And our National Hydrogen Energy Mission based on the 4 verticals policy, and they are looking for the standards and regulations, and PPP for R&D program, skill development, as Mr. Kishan was mentioned, and many other colleagues from the UK side and Scotland side, they were working on, and they suggested to go for this. Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, from where I was there as an advisor there, and who is the nodal and focal point for this. And various verticals and various programs have been flagged up, and this mission is being overlooked by very high-level committee. Very high-level committee in the sense the cabinet secretary is the chairing these meetings. So whatever the work is started, it will be monitored very properly. Next, please. Of course, there are various challenges and risk categories are there. I'm not going to very detailed deliberation on this, but broadly, it is a technological risk. As many of us know that the technology disruption and unforeseen developments is possible. How to risk mitigate it. These are the challenges which we are working on, and we are helping the government of India and other entities, business entities here to overcome of the mission risk mitigation program. Operational and project level risks are there. Water availability is a scare. Land availability is another issue. And overall safety concerns are there. But without financial and market risk, which is very, very high at this moment of time, nobody is giving much attention on the investment in this sector. But after announcement of the green energy mission, likely that the investment will come from the develop and many other international and multilateral agencies. Next, please. The various policies and regulatory and framework has been created. Policy and other initiatives has been started. Global hub. India is looking for making India as a global hub for green hydrogen production and export. As Mr. Krishnan also highlighted this point. creating a market demand. This is one of the area where renewable energy purchase obligation, RPO, and other factors is being taken into account. And how to do ease out the business. This is the government priority, and everyone is working on that, and we are giving a very ease of doing business opportunities in India. So industries coming from the Scotland or United Kingdom sites can find a very good environment for working here. And of course, fiscal incentives are also available. And the PLI production link incentives can be offered, and many other things can be possible. Next, please. I'm not going to detail of that, but I'm just covering two small programs which have been initiated by the Global Green Growth Institute with the three partner countries, India, Indonesia, and Thailand. Please, next, please. I'm just coming into Indian activities which we are working on. Cost differential between the gray and green hydrogen is very, very wide. How to reduce it? This is a very challenging task. And we are working and we are developing innovative institutional mechanism as well as financial mechanism to reduce the cost. Idea is that ultimately the green hydrogen should be somewhere about $1 per kg. At this moment, it is around $4 per kg, or $4 to $7 per kg. How to reduce this cost? What type of innovation, research and development would be required? What type of this infrastructure will be required? This is the production cost I'm talking about, not the storage and transportation, which has been widely elaborated in the beginning itself. So I'm not going to, this is one of the Indian program where we have two instruments which we are developing. One of the institutional mechanism and the financial instruments. And hopefully that this will help in the mitigating the risk which I have indicated in my previous slides. Next, please. Similarly, we have started working with the Indonesian side, where the opportunities of the tapping large number of industries, fertilizer, geothermal energy, which we are tapping the energy like what we are talking about the solar energy here in India. In Scotland, us talking about the wind energy, and we are working on that, how to tap the geothermal energy. And then one of the program and one of the study which we are from the GGI side is carrying out for the Indonesian side. Next, please. Similarly, we are also working with the Morocco, where the opportunities for the solar and the wind sector is very high and land availability is high. So we are with the government entities, we are working with that, developing different models to how to go for the production of green ammonia and other materials, so that it can be supply. And as Mr. Kishan mentioned about that, India is going to be very, very big market for the supply chain. My last slide would be, next please. Lot can be entered in partnership with, can be established with business to business partnership, business to government partnership, government to government partnership, any B2B, G2G, or B2G, or when whatever the industrial sector desire can be possible. One of the very strong area which I feel that the pilot programs are needed, hard to abate sector, what Mr. Kishan mentioned about the steel industries, cement industries, and many other industries where we can start with the possibility to develop pilot programs. We are looking for the partnering industries, partnering government to establish this type of program, because this under the green hydrogen mission, it has been very, very highlighted that. Similarly, joint venture opportunities for the manufacturing of the electrolyzer. At this moment, we are looking for the establishment, and the most of the funds allocated for under the PLI scheme is for this purpose. And this, if it happens, then making green hydrogen hubs in India may not be very difficult. So GGI with the government entities and government support, bringing out some of the studies. We also look for the cooperation with the Scotland government and institution, especially the Aberdeen University of Aberdeen, where a lot of work is being carried out. And I feel that they are also very strong in the biomass to hydrogen and biomass of materials, research materials. So University of Aberdeen can be associated with this word. Thank you, Mr. Kishan, for giving me an opportunity. Thanks to Vicky, for allowing me to speak on this.
Thank you, Dr. Khare, for your overarching comments. May I invite Anish Mandal, partner Deloitte, to give you a talk.
Thank you so much, Krishnan, and thank you to all the participants, and a very warm welcome to the delegates as well. I'll just keep it short. I think most of the things have been already highlighted. What are the opportunities over here and what could be done, and what kind of collaboration. But I guess a very insightful series of presentation we heard from delegates as well. And from there, we could see what are the different, I would say, collaborative attempts we could jointly kind of take it forward. So in that context, I just wanted to kind of give a very short presentation that what our thoughts are or what my thoughts would be, and then kind of leave it at that. So let me share my screen if that's visible. Right. Right. So I think it's very quickly, Government of India is fully committed to kind of achieve net zero by 2070, and hydrogen economy is going to play a major role in achieving that. So therefore, we are in the right track as a country to acknowledge that, and therefore focus on how to promote green hydrogen and green ammonia and the entire hydrogen ecosystem, right? So from that perspective, of course, the National Green Hydrogen Mission and the hydrogen policy were launched, and we have now almost USD $2.2 billion of funds allocated, or budgetary allocation have been provided towards hydrogen supply and electrolyzer manufacturing. Somewhere around $185 million is allocated towards green hydrogen pilot projects, and lot of it, I guess, which was presented, could be qualified as some of them, right? And then $100 million is allocated towards R&D and other components. What we have as a target is to kind of achieve 5 million ton of green hydrogen productions by 2030, which is equivalent to somewhere around 60 gigawatt of electrolyzer deployments in the country by 2030. And currently what we have is somewhere around 6 million ton of demand coming from the oil refineries and the fertilizer sector largely, right? So therefore, it's easy to kind of have a replacement demand. But at the end of the day, of course, there is a larger industrial transition which is taking place within the country because of their internal carbon prices, because of their own corporates pledges and all. And what we see is, of course, hydrogen is going to be big by 2030 itself. Keeping, and as I think highlighted, the country is focused on reducing cost, and therefore a number of initiatives have already been taken by the Government of India. One of them is, of course, kind of coming out with a waiver or on transmission charges or interstate transmission charges on the renewables for any kind of hydrogen production throughout the life of the project, right? So that itself is a big, and therefore number of states are also coming out with their own green hydrogen policies, with their own capital subsidies, and as well as enabling electricity, banking, and other aspects. In addition, of course, the second phase of the policy could focus on demand side obligations, and as well as coming out with dedicated budgetary allocations for production linked incentives. So those are, of course, in under preparation. Now, having said that, that's what government is doing now. We already have somewhere around 20 number of projects, or more than 20 projects, which are in advanced scale or pilots have been launched, and somewhere around another 20 projects roughly which are in the planning stages. So this is largely kind of green hydrogen and green ammonia. People are exploring, or the or firms are exploring that green ammonia could be exported in the European region because, of course, the regulations there because of the I would say the what kind of I'm saying the carbon prices which are getting traded there. So those are of course advantages. But at the end of the day, there is a high domestic demand as well, which is catering to some of these projects as well. Now, the focus are largely in the cost reduction and as well as ecosystem development. That's what would be the focus for the next 3-4 years, and therefore, what you said and some of the technical projects or know-hows which you just presented, that could be very, very helpful in both these aspects, reducing cost and as well as kind of ecosystem development. The market development, which is more in terms of demand side obligations and how the domestic demand can actually pick up, that should be kind of facilitated by the government and the industries. And the cross-country collaboration is more towards as a country's dream of kind of positioning themselves and one of the major export players. So therefore, there could be cross-country collaborations in kind of shaping up those bilateral agreements as well. Now, how we see the collaboration could focus on, and it's very rightly said, on the technology and R&D, and that's what the focus of the presentations were. You are number one probably in integrating offshore wind-based electrolyzer or green hydrogen productions, and therefore that's one thing which is, of course, required. India as a country is just opening up to offshore wind, and to reach net zero, what we believe is somewhere around 180 gigawatt of offshore we are talking about. So therefore, that itself is a lot of potential. So integrating offshore wind in the electrolyzer and green hydrogen, how that can be done, and the technological integration about it. You mentioned a lot about hydrogen storage and compression. So that's one thing, of course, we are just starting, and we'll be, of course, requiring that technology and as well as project experience. Anything about refueling system, which again, you are positioning yourself as one of the export oriented kind of economies. And therefore, refueling system technologies could be, of course, again, could be one of the important, I would say, technology levers. And then the larger goal about using of ammonia and fuel cell in shipping applications, ferries and other things, that could be one thing which the country could be requiring, and we could tap in some of the funds being allocated towards pilot programs as well. As I said, $185 million dollars have been allocated towards pilot programs in some of these, so you could look at that. And then development of hydrogen gas grid, as you rightly said in one of your presentations. So that's one thing. Again, some feasibility studies have been done in some of the states, so that could be taken up. Rest of it, I guess, all has been mentioned: creation of hydrogen hubs, project development support, and industrial decarbonization, or maybe kind of academic collaborations in setting up center of excellences. And with that thought, I'd like to kind of give it back to Vicky, and of course open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Anish. May I now invite Anurag Nalapaniki to give his presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Krishna, and thank you, Vicky, for giving me the opportunity to present our work. I am Anurag Nalapanini. I am from WRI, India. We are primarily a public policy think tank, and we have been working quite closely with various stakeholders across the green hydrogen ecosystem in India. And here to present a very brief presentation on how our work has been evolving. So globally, green hydrogen has seen, hydrogen in general has seen a huge focus for a lot of countries to set their decarbonization goals. As you can see, a lot of countries have already set in place national hydrogen strategies or roadmaps with ambitious targets for low carbon hydrogen. India has recently joined the league as well with the announcement of the National Hydrogen Mission. Hydrogen demand in India specifically is expected to grow. We are currently at about 6 million metric tons of hydrogen, but this is not low carbon hydrogen. This is primarily gray or brown hydrogen, and it's being consumed by the fertilizers, chemicals, and refineries. But we see a huge amount of growth prospect just based on the amount of development that's going to happen across sectors in India. And this is going to create new opportunities for applications for hydrogen. And we see a projected demand anywhere between 20 to 25 million metric tons by 2030. And the timely launch of the National Green Hydrogen Mission will ensure that at least a part of this demand is captured by the green hydrogen industry. I'm not going to get too much into the details here. A lot of the panelists have already have spoken quite in detail about what's happening through the mission. But primarily, the mission looks at demand creation through capturing global demand for green hydrogen, substituting India's own domestic import as well as creating domestic demand within India, enabling or incentivizing supply through two programs. Primarily, one is through electrolyzer manufacturing and the other one is through incentivizing the production of green hydrogen. And to support this entire ecosystem, there are key enablers planned around R&D, ease of doing business, regulation standards, creating the infrastructure and supply chain, and skill development through public awareness. So the key outcomes that India is looking at, again, a lot of the panelists have gotten into quite a bit of details around this, but 5 million metric tons of annual production by 2030. This will require anywhere between 60 to 100 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity, supported additionally by about 125 gigawatts of RE. So this renewable energy is going to be primarily solar, but we also do expect some wind capacity as well as the biomass to play a key role in this annual production for green hydrogen. So our work with our stakeholders has led to an initial mapping of trying to understand where this green hydrogen demand is going to come up. Being an export-focused policy, obviously we see a lot of ports which are vying to set up green hydrogen projects. And you will see this as well with most of the projects being announced or in advanced stages of discussion being located close to these ports. And also, if you see, these projects are also being planned close to centers of consumption, which could, in the initial stages, be ports, refineries, fertilizers, also blending with natural gas and steel production plants. This is again overlaid with the renewable energy capacity that India has. As you can see, a lot of the potential capacity for renewable energy is located in the west and the south of the country, and a lot of these projects are also expected to correspondingly come up in these areas. In terms of collaboration opportunities between India and Scotland to drive this green hydrogen economy forward, the red boxes that you see are the key areas that will enable a faster adoption of renewable hydrogen across the ecosystem. So this would include standards and certifications, specifically a standard for what we would consider low carbon hydrogen. As we stand today, various countries have taken different stands on what they consider to be low carbon, green, or renewable hydrogen. A standardized definition, either through emission certification or through a production pathway based definition, will give a lot of clarity to developers to enable establishing projects that can cater to the specific requirements of individual countries. Infrastructure is going to play a key role as well, not just for the trade of green hydrogen and its derivatives, but also for the goods and services required to enable a hydrogen ecosystem. Technology is also integral over here, given that a lot of the current technology required for a hydrogen ecosystem is in a very nascent stage. This would include, like other panelists had also mentioned, the electrolyzers, the transport and storage solutions, as well as end-use applications where hydrogen can find its applicability in sectors outside of its current use cases. Skill development is also going to play a key role here. A coordinated and comprehensive skilling program is needed across the hydrogen value chain. This would include both academic initiatives as well as commercial skill development activities, so that green jobs can be generated through the hydrogen economy that is being developed. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Happy to take any questions going forward. Thank you. Thank you again to Vicky and giving me this opportunity to present our thoughts here.
Thank you so much, Anurag. Now may I invite Tarun Shankar, Senior Investment Professional, IFC, to make his talk.
Sorry, Tarun, we can't hear you.
I think Tarun has lost connectivity somehow. I'm just
Oh,
getting you in that Hindi's panel. So, Shikha, can you just give a call and check with him? Because I can't locate him. In the meantime,
No, so Arpan is there on the screen. There is some problem with his microphone. He can hear us, but we can't hear him though.
yes. Yes, neither we are able to see him.
No, we can see him though.
We can see him,
He's on
sorry.
the screen.
Can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, but let me.
We're waiting for Tarun to probably be able to enable his microphone. No, we can't still
Sorry,
hear
we
you.
can't hear you. I think it was better with microphone.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible.
we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm so sorry for taking the last 3 minutes. And I am aware of the fact that we are running short of time. So as a very brief introduction, I represent International Finance Corporation, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank and the largest development financing institution in the private sector. Our mandate is essentially to support uh, new sectors and look at transactions which could be structured in a very bankable manner. Happy to know that this specific platform is being set up or both by Scottish Chambers of Commerce as well as FICCI. I think enough has been said in the last hour and a half. So my only suggestion is, given the importance and the amount of discussions which is happening on green hydrogen space as the potential energy carrier and the solution to solving problems in the future, it's important that both the chambers of commerce essentially exchange notes among the different stakeholders to be able to support the initiatives lined up or announced by both the governments, both in India and Scotland, and have more and more forums where the different market players could interact and exchange notes uh, with the intent of essentially rolling out the ambitious implementation plans. From International Finance Corporation, our objective is to essentially support the private sector developers in essentially preparing their projects as well as looking at structuring solutions with the intent of crowding in private sector capital as well as concessional finance to support such capital intensive projects. Uh, each 1 million ton per annum equivalent of these projects would require billions and billions of dollars. So the way the projects have to be structured, the way the capital would have to come at various levels, whether it's debt, equity, or mezzanine structures in between, would need to be reviewed and evaluated. And to that extent, international development financing institutions are willing to support the private sector. So having said that, without further ado, we remain available for further consultations in this space to interested parties and supporting them in whatever way we can. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarun. And very encouraging to know that apart from technology and project management and human resource, the capital could also be available. I reiterate what I said in the opening remarks. I believe that there could be a lot of potential for India-Scotland collaboration. We have common goals. We have for export markets, domestic markets, and we should arbitrate each other's skills, cost advantages, and make a success of it. And if we do, I hope Paul will give us a bottle or two of emission-free Scotch whiskey to make a toast over it. Arpan, back to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for moderating this insightful panel from the Indian side. And as you rightly mentioned, we try to cover all the key aspects, be it in terms of the skills, be it in terms of the finance, the production, and all the ecosystems evolving on the green hydrogen. So I think we are now coming towards the end phase of this program. Before I request our other co-chair, Mr. Naresh Lalwani, I would also like to thank Kuluru sir and all the panelists from the Indian side, and would check with Ms. Shiona, do we have time for a couple of quick questions if there are any, or shall I directly jump towards the concluding remarks?
I think we're just going to double check and see if any questions have come through. I'm not sure.
Not in the chat box, but are there any questions if anyone would like to come in?
Anything from the Scottish side? No, I think what we'll do is we'll happy to move on, and we can just connect businesses separately then in that case.
Sure. So I would now request Mr. Naresh Lalwani, who is the co-chair FICCI Hydrogen Committee and Head Business Development, Green Hydrogen and Derivatives, JSW Energy, to have the concluding remarks and propose the formal vote of thanks from Indian side.
Yeah, good afternoon to the Scottish participants and good evening to the Indian participants. Today's roundtable has been a big step towards exploring the collaboration opportunities between India and Scotland on the subject of green hydrogen. FICCI has been working very closely with the government and the industry for development of green hydrogen ecosystem in the country. And today's interaction is a big step toward our efforts and initiative. I am also happy to note that going forward, we are going to sign a MOU with the Scottish Chamber of Commerce and host a Scottish delegation to the FICCI Green Hydrogen Summit scheduled for mid-May this year. I am thankful to the Scottish Chambers for their support to work along with the FICCI. Hydrogen, particularly green hydrogen, is one of the most critical and most talked about subject these days when we look at the decarbonization and meeting our climate and net zero targets. The government of India has been very active in introducing various policies and initiatives in making the country a hub of green hydrogen. The country has great potential in exploring international collaboration with countries like Scotland, which will be a win-win situation for both the sides. India and Scotland both have green hydrogen target in place. India, for instance, through its National Hydrogen Energy Mission, has set a target for 5 million ton per annum production by 2030 and an additional target to capture 10% of the global demand. Scotland too has set an initial ambition of producing at least 5 gigawatt of renewable and low carbon hydrogen by 2030 and 25 gigawatt by 2045. With such commitment, both the countries have great opportunities to collaborate for technology, innovation, R&D, skill development, manufacturing, and harnessing the startups. I believe private organizations from both sides would play an active role in enhancing cross-country collaboration in this area. The Scottish and Indian presentations have been quite insightful and useful in understanding the current scenario for policies, technology, and investment opportunities on the subject. Green hydrogen will surely take a central stage in clean energy journey of both the economies. The roundtable today has served as an excellent platform for a stakeholder to ideate an opportunity and collaborate prospects. The FICCI Green Hydrogen Summit that we are now planning for May 2023 will be a stepping stone for taking this discussion to the next level. We look forward to wider participation and engagement with the Scottish entities during the summit. On this note, I thank all the participants and the speaker for taking out their time to make this session interactive and interesting, and also to organizing team for today's arrangement. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the concluding remarks from the Indian side. Just to add to what he suggested, the probable dates for the Indian Green Hydrogen Summit would be around 18th or 19th of May. We will close all the dates within a couple of days, and we'll let everyone, we will share with everyone the final date. So maybe you can tentatively block your calendars accordingly. And I would now request Ms. Shona Shen to propose the formal vote of thanks from the Scottish side. Over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I know we're eating into your time. I know it's the evening in India, so we really appreciate everybody staying on and working with us. So just to reiterate some of the comments, it's obvious from today that there are lots of businesses across the world who are really keen to share their knowledge and experiences, explore new opportunities and forge new partnerships. So the Scottish Chambers with our partners, we'll work with FICCI to make sure that continues to do so. Let's keep an open mind. Let's continue to share our ideas and be inspired by the possibilities that lie ahead. So I'd like to thank all the participants and speakers from India. We appreciate your time. I'd like to thank the team at FICCI for working so closely with us. It's been great to get to know you in the past few weeks. Appreciate all your support. My thanks go to the team from Wood today for hosting us in Scotland. The coffee was sensational. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Consul General and his team for helping us to sort of bring this to our attention and give us the opportunity. And thank you to all our delegates also for attending today. Please keep these conversations going. Let's see what comes from them. And I just wish you all a good afternoon in Scotland and a great evening in India. Thank you very much indeed.
Sure. Thank you so much. On the note, I would now just like to have the thanking this thing. So I would like to start and thank our Consul General of India in Edinburgh, Mr. Vijay Selvaraj, Param, particularly from our FICCI office, Ms. Shona Sen from Scottish Chamber, the panelists from the Scotland, Mr. Koloru Krishanji for moderating the Indian panel, panelists from the Indian side, Shri Sandeep Kashyap, Shri Naresh Lalwani, and all the participants and delegates for joining us today. Special thanks to the Scottish Chamber also for organizing this and supporting this. And we look forward to a wider participation, as was mentioned by Nareshji, that we look forward to have a wider participation during the program in the month of May. I think today's discussions were quite insightful, and we should be able to take this forward and get the desired results in terms of collaboration that we are looking on the subject. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to meeting you and taking this forward. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And if I have missed anyone, my apologies. Thanks, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.